start of the last semester in the summer heat. So I think your presence today reflects your interest in the event, in the topic, and I think it's safe to say that the constitutional reforms, the referendum on the constitutional reform in a few days in Turkey, Sunday in particular, the 16th of April, will be a momentous event, not just for Turkey as a country. Constitutional reforms by their nature can be always transformative moments, but the reforms that citizens will be voting on in a few days have the potential of bringing about significant shifts in the political economy and the trajectory of Turkey as a country, as a nation, as a neighbor in general. This is also happening at a time when much around Turkey, its citizens, its neighborhood, in the Arab world and elsewhere, is going through testing moments of internal uncertainty, political instability, regional security challenges, and a host of other issues that I think most of you are familiar with. I think it's also safe to say that if not for the US strike against Syria a few days ago, and the fallout from that diplomatically, the referendum in Turkey will be the event that the world will be watching for its significance for Turkey, for its neighbors, and for the world at large. We're especially delighted to be hosting this event on the eve of the referendum, literally a few days away, when most polls appear to suggest that the ultimate outcome remains uncertain, although the yes vote seems to have a thin edge. But like most of you, I have been especially humbled in the last year and a half by election outcomes around the world. Forecasts, confident projections that have been undermined by popular outturns, unexpected events on the ground. And so we're entering the next few days and this discussion with an open mind as to what this moment means. We have invited 3 excellent commentators, speakers, who know Turkey more than most of us, who've been looking at the country, who've been studying the issues, and who will take up different aspects of what the constitutional reforms possibly mean, its implications domestically and abroad. Our first commentator, speaker tonight, is Ali Bakir. Ali is currently a senior political advisor at the Qatar Bayülkulkjeri in Turkey. And I'm going to be making some mispronouncements, forgive me tonight, when it comes to Turkish words. They're not always the most easy to pronounce for an outsider. He's working on his PhD dissertation in issues of political transformation and social change. He's been an active observer and writer on many aspects of relations between Turkey and the Arab world and Turkey and the world at large. We're delighted to have you with us, Ali, tonight.
Thank you very much. Me too.
To my left immediately is a dear friend, Ghalib Dalai, whom I've seen a few times just in the last few weeks, both in Istanbul and here, and look forward to engaging with him again. Ghalib is currently the research director of Sharq Forum and a senior associate fellow on Turkey and Kurdish affairs at the Jazeera Center for Studies. Ghalib is a noted commentator and analyst on foreign policy of Turkey, the dynamics of change, and the challenges that this present moment must confront for policymakers and leaders in Turkey. Last but not least, and an award will be given to whomever can pronounce his name in one go without making a mistake, is our dear friend Uzgur Unlu Hisar Rijli.
This is good. Yes,
He's the director of the German Marshall Fund office in Ankara. Prior to that, he was a manager of the Resource Development Department of the Educational Volunteers Foundation of Turkey. He's also a noted observer on domestic affairs, and he will be commenting on what this referendum means for Turkey's democratic governance and for Turkey as a model for its neighbors and other countries in the emerging world. Without further ado, I'd like to start the discussion with our speakers and pose the following question to them. From their respective vantage points, whether you're a foreign policy analyst, an observer on domestic affairs, an actor in the public space in Turkey, what are the potential implications of this referendum should the yes vote prevail for the future of Turkey? And what are the implications, by extension, for Turkey's engagement with its neighbors and Turkey's relations with the rest of the world? Perhaps, Ghalib, I'll start with you, given your broad foreign policy focus, and invite you to comment on this broad question.
Sure. Well, I guess we'll have only 3-4 minutes for the first round.
5 minutes.
Okay, thanks. Well, thank you very much for the invitation, Dr. Yusuf, and I'm very pleased to be here, and I'm very pleased also to see such a large turnout, given the fact that we are on an evening, on a hot evening. When it comes to three observations of the general referendum, will also tell much about what the implication will be on the foreign policy. The first one is, this is probably the most consequential referendum or election referendum in the history of Turkey since the introduction of the multi-party system, which has been introduced legally in 1946 and practically in 1950s. And also, it is also the rupture or the change in the political system that Turkey that was in place since 1839, since the Tanzimat period in Turkey. Since then, Turkey either has partially or a fully parliamentary system in the country. But despite this significance and despite this importance, this referendum has generated less excitement, very little excitement, and despite the fact that the poll shows that it is very much closely contested referendum, you don't see this being reflected in the public debate or on the streets. And despite the fact, this is also probably the most consequential referendum that Turkey has ever had too, because Turkey had the previous 6 referendum as well too. We don't see that much excitement on the public debates or on the public sphere as well too. Despite all this significance, there is a very less enthusiasm for this referendum, both particularly from within the pro-government circle and from the circle that supports this referendum, for 2 reasons. One of them is because still there is a significant chunk of the people are not very convinced for the necessity of, particularly with the content of the package. And secondly, there is very little that people feel will change practically if this passes or if this fails. The reason that I'm saying so, legally, this will change dramatically. We will be witnessing to the change of Turkey's political system from semi-parliamentarism to a presidential system. We will see a major reorganization of the Turkish body politics, the structure of the Turkish state. But practically, when it comes to the policy issues, we will see little change for a very simple reason, because in the last couple of years, it was more or less the executive that was making all the big decisions when it comes to big foreign and domestic policy issues, particularly with the change of the prime minister in Turkey, the departure from the Ahmet Davutoğlu to Binali Yıldırım. The major issue of foreign policy and the domestic policy was decided mostly at the presidential level rather than the parliamentary or other institutions. So in this regard, it is very significant, but it will produce very little practical results. So what does it mean in terms of Turkish foreign policy? Because that was the question that I was posed. I will divide this into the 2 fronts. The first one is what I call the Eastern Front, Middle East, North Africa, and the policy towards the MENA countries. And the second one on the Western Front, the relation with US and Europe. Let me go first with what I call the Eastern Front. When you look at the current Turkish foreign policy towards the Middle East, you see couple points coming to the fore. Once Turkey has very much downsized its foreign policy towards the region. Basically, when you today look at the geographical space of Turkish foreign policy, Turkey's regional policy, it goes from northern Iraq to northern Syria, or the vice versa. And in these spheres, there are three issues that is topping the agenda of Turkish foreign policy. One of them is the prevention of the establishment of a contiguous PKK-PYD belt along Turkish border, particularly in Syria, but it's not confined to Syria because right on the other side of the border, starting from the Shingal, all the way to the Afrin. Secondly, as the Syrian crisis has changed the shape and the nature, Turkey's primary concern went from the regime change. I mean, discursively, Turkey still does support the regime change, but Turkey's priority went from the regime change to some kind of, let's say, regime reform, which is not tenable. And actually, the practical policy that is in place is, one can call it like counterterrorism or counterinsurgency. So from the regime change to the counterinsurgency, and that is very much related with the fact that Turkey is trying to deal with the negative security externalities of the Syrian crisis. That is the second most important goal that the Turkish foreign policy today had. And the third one is very much related with the competition with Iran. When you look at Turkey's current regional policy, one thing is very clear. Despite all the warm wars that sometimes we are hearing between Turkey and Iran, the Iranian growing influence, particularly in the Turkey's neighborhood, is very much a concern to Turkey. And with the policy, which I call the geographic space of it is quite limited, the third major goal of Turkey is to curtail the Iranian influence as much as possible. So to do this in the policy-making process, right now, the change of the system will not have a dramatic impact on all these three fronts. Because all these three fronts, right now, there isn't much difference between the institution within the country. And given the fact that Turkey has a single-party government with a very much power concentrated effectively in the hands of the president, we will not see any major change in this regard. These three goals will be pursued even if it is no vote in this regard, because no votes will not mean the change of the government, nor it means the change of the president, because it's a referendum, and until 2019, the election cycle will take place in 2019. Probably if there is a no vote, we will see some kind of pressure for an early election, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the case. So the election has been scheduled for 2019. So we're not going to see a major change on the Eastern Front, what I call. The major factor that might change the policy in this regard is not what Turkey will have with this election. It's very much dependent what will be the evolution of the nature of the relation between the Turkey and PKK will take the shape. Because it went from the dialogue process to once again the conflictual side of the Kurdish issue has dominated the scene. And unless and until there is a change on this front, Turkey's regional policy will not be dramatically changed. And Turkey will not be effectively will not be in the business of the regime change, and unless and until the U.S. change its idea of the regime change as well too. Once again, go into the regime change side. When it comes to the Western Front, this is very much also dependent what will be the reaction of the West to the election outcome after the election. Probably the preference of Turkey will be, after the election, we will highly likely see that Turkey will try to kind of like mend some of the ties that has been very much broken during the election period. You have seen this tension between Turkey and Europe. You have seen this tension between Turkey and US, particularly over the Syria. I don't expect much change regarding Turkey and US because in the end, it is very much related to the dynamics in Syria, and it's very much also related to the nature of the alliance between the US and PYD. Unless and until there is some change on this regard, I don't see much change in relation between Turkey and US. But what we are going to see between Turkey and Europe is something to be seen, because I think after the election, the government will try to mend some of those times. And if it seems like, some kind of positive response, then I think that we'll have some implication of it in the domestic policy as well too. You will see some kind of accommodating steps probably being taken by the government. But if, because we have also election cycles in Europe as well too, we have in Germany, in France, in 2018, in Austria as well too. If this will not work, I think we will see a much more inward-looking and much more nationalist Turkey, both in domestic and foreign policy as well too. So I'll leave it here.
Thank you.
And
Ali, maybe I should come to you next
Yes.
to follow on this line of thinking.
Thank you very much. First, I'm very delighted to be with you today to discuss very timely and important topic about the Turkish referendum and its implication. Actually, I have some comment on my colleague, what he has said. But before any delay, please allow me to speak in Arabic, if this is possible. Is it?
It is.
All right.
Although you could continue.
in English as well.
Yeah, you could continue in English, if only because I'm not sure. Does everybody who needs headset have a headset?
Okay. أنا باعتقادي طبعا موضوع
In my opinion, expecting any results is very difficult, especially after the experience we had in the United States and Britain last year. But regardless, if there is to be really a no vote in this referendum, this will be a major blow to the AK party, and I think this will be the biggest or the first probably defeat for President Erdogan himself and the AK party, and in that case we will see some sort of instability in the country, and this will reflect negatively on the economic situation in the country, and we will see some sort of a shrinking of the role and influence of the president, and this will have a negative impact on the country's foreign policy. And if we take all these considerations into account, Turkey's ability to interfere in other countries or to achieve anything so far as Iraq or Syria is concerned will be weakened and will be less credible in the eyes of many countries who rely on Turkey. I think some countries will exploit a negative no vote to increase political pressure on Erdogan and the Turkish political system, especially from the EU. But so far as the relationship with the United States and Russia, I don't think that will change much. But as I said previously, if Turkey's internal situation is less stable, then its value and role will recede, especially in the eyes of the countries who look towards Turkey as a credible partner. And of course, the United States and Russia too, and Ghalib spoke about the relations with Iran, and Turkey's ability to strike some sort of a balance between it and Iran's expansionist policies and influence in the area. I don't have time to delve into much details, but if the vote is to be a yes vote, after all, and this is what opinion polls indicate, there is a slight edge for the yes campaign, as media reports indicate. This will be followed in the short term at least, and maybe in the midterm that there'll be some stability inside Turkey. This will not be like Moses' shaft. It will not make people walk on water, but the situation of Erdogan and his government will be stronger. They will be feeling that from a legal point of view, at least, they are in a stronger position, and the repercussions will be mixed, I think. In other words, there will be some positive results and some negative results and consequences. If for anything, the the elections, whether parliamentary or presidential, will be held once every 5 years, and this means the term or the period allowed for the authorities to have a definitive foreign policy will be easier because the timetable or time frame was not available in the past. For example, since March 2014 until November 2015, in other words, around 20 months, four fundamental elections were held: presidential, municipal, and parliamentary twice. So this kind of elections require a lot of focus and attention to the internal situation, and this will not allow the government to set policies at the international level. This will be avoided if the institution, if the reforms are approved. And also, the outside powers will have to confront a stronger president and a stronger political system in Turkey, and this may also lead to a window of opportunity to deal with things on a more equal footing. The third point is Turkey's ability to influence Iraq, Syria, and the influence of Iran, and to build strong partnerships with the United States and Russia, because the Turkish actor, in the case of winning the referendum and being in a stronger economic situation, will increase Turkey's ability to influence events, and they'll have a stronger foreign policy. But nonetheless, having said that, we must say that the circle which will be responsible for setting foreign policy will necessarily shrink, and foreign policy issues will be set in the hands of a selected few in the upper classes of the system. And in that case, the Turkish foreign policy will be susceptible to quick changes and some volatility. This will be some of the negative consequences, but as it was said, it's difficult to forecast. I met many people next month. One of them was a leader in the CHP, the People's Popular Republican Party. When I asked him, he said with full confidence that he forecasted, he expected the no vote to campaign to win. He had maybe some reasons to be optimistic, but as from the beginning of this month, there are changes, and some opinion polls are now indicating that the yes vote will be in the front, but it's still difficult for us. We cannot call a result simply relying on the opinion polls. We know the huge surprise in the United States with the Trump election, and there are a lot of people who haven't decided yet, and they will play a major role in the outcome. And I think the AK party has managed in the last 2 weeks to convince the unconvinced, the people who have undecided, because of the engagement with some European countries, and also because of the Kirkuk issue in Iraq, when the Kurdish parties raised the Kurdish flag over the government buildings, and this has pushed some people and closer to the yes vote. This is to be, I think, we have to wait and see, and I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Your job is tougher now.
Thank you very much. It's both a pleasure and honor for me to speak at Brookings Doha Center in front of such a distinguished audience. So thank you for inviting me. My name is Özgür Ünlü Hisarcıklı, but no worries, even my mother can't pronounce it right, so I'm really used to it. I'm the Ankara Office Director of the German Marshall Fund of the United States, which is an American institution, which was founded with a grant from the German Bundestag. That's why we have the names of two countries in our name. However, GMF has a tradition. All of our office directors are local in their countries, so I will be speaking as a Turkish citizen rather than a representative of an American institution. First of all, I will try to summarize, and it will be a real summary about what this constitutional referendum is about. This referendum is about consolidating political power in Turkey in the person of the elected president with little room for checks and balances and with little separation of powers in a very short summary. And what do I mean and why do I say this? As we know, there are three branches of government or three powers in a democracy, which are the executive, the legislative, and the judicial power. Now, in the proposed system, the president monopolizes all executive power. If we want to make a comparison with, for example, the United States, in the United States, the vice president is elected together with the president. So as soon as the election result is over, you know who the vice president will be. You know who will be representing the president when the president is traveling, or you know who will replace the president in the unfortunate case of the president not being available anymore for any reasons. In the proposed system, the number of presidents will be decided upon by the president after he is elected, and he can replace those vice presidents as he likes. And unlike in the United States or in parliamentary systems, the number of ministers will be determined by the president himself after he is elected. And he will appoint, and of course they won't be ministers, they will be secretaries. The president will appoint his secretaries, and there will be no need for parliamentary approval. There will not be a vote of confidence in the parliament. Whereas, for example, in the United States, not only the secretaries, but the undersecretaries, the deputy undersecretaries, and the assistant deputy undersecretaries need the approval of the Senate. This is why President Trump has still not been able to form his cabinet. In the proposed system, the president will be able to appoint all of those executive positions in a single day. And he will, for example, be able to abolish the central bank if he wishes. One morning, he could wake up and say, I don't believe in central banks. I'm abolishing the central bank. He will issue a presidential decree, and gone is the Turkish central bank. He will not only be able to appoint all the executive positions, he will be able to design the executive system at his will, and the parliament won't be able to overrule unless it has qualified majority. The parliament could overrule these decisions of, let's say, reshaping the executive by the president using presidential decrees, but only if the parliament has a qualified majority, and parliaments rarely can bring together a qualified majority. So this is about the executive. Why do I say the president will also control the legislative? Well, because the president will be able to become the chairman, a leader of a political party. And as he is elected the president, it will be very likely that the party he is chairing will also win the most number of seats in the parliament. And because in Turkey, intra-party democracy is very weak, as a matter of fact, parliamentarians represent the will of the president of their party rather than the will of the people, because it's actually the president of the party that puts them on the list of candidates. And therefore, they are subject to the authority of the president of their party, who is, by the way, if they are representing the majority group in the parliament, who is also the president of the country. This will enable the president to have an oversight, a tutelage power over the parliament. Moreover, as a matter of fact, the president will also have direct access to legislation through presidential decrees. The president will be able to issue presidential decrees, and in the case of a presidential decree not complying with an existing law, it will be an existing law that will prevail. But there is no, let's say, referee that could decide if there is really a difference between a law and a presidential decree. And if the parliament wants to overrule a presidential decree by the president, it's impossible unless the parliament, as I have said, has a qualified majority. So the president will also play a legislative role. In the judiciary, the president will elect six members of the Judicial Council. And in Turkey, Judicial Council is very important because they appoint all the judges and prosecutors, and they could change their locations. They could take a lot of decisions about shaping the Turkish judiciary. The president will elect 6 members of the Judicial Council, and the parliament will elect the remaining 7, the parliament who is under the tutelage of the president, which means that the president will directly and indirectly appoint all members of the Judicial Council. So this is why I'm saying the president will control all 3 bodies of the Turkish political system. So what does the yes camp say about these changes, and what is their argument, and what does the no camp say? The yes camp's argument is that in the case of the parliamentary system that Turkey has, there is no stability of government. This system, although it has not been the case during the last decade, this system usually produces weak coalition governments, and we see elections and early elections, governments changing every 6 months, etc. And this prevents any government to have a long-term vision, to have a long-term program. And by the time the government can really understand what's going on in the country, it collapses and a new government is needed. So the first argument is that Turkey needs stability of government, and the current system doesn't produce it. The second argument, and this is the one actually that's more talked about during the election, the referendum campaign by the government, Turkey is under siege. There are external enemies and internal collaborators who are attacking Turkey from all sides, terrorist organizations, foreign governments who are jealous of Turkey, the Istanbul airport, etc. And in order to cope with this existential crisis, Turkey needs a very strong executive. This is not even about managing the government well. It's about coping with the existential crisis. The opposing camp, on the other hand, argues that the proposed changes would lead to a party state and a one-man rule. And except the case of the United States, all countries that are ruled by presidential systems are economically, developmentally doing worse than those ruled by parliamentary system. They would lead to, under these proposed changes, would lead to underdevelopment as well. Now, from my perspective, and I will actually stop here, and I can continue during the second round, right now, there is an unstable stability. There's an unstable stability in Turkey. With the proposed changes, there would be stable instability. That will be what's changing.
Thank you, Özgür. We could go straight to the audience. I think we've heard enough that will open up for a very, very fruitful and fluid discussion. But perhaps I would like to just come to you for one round by posing a question and giving you a chance to comment on each other. But we'll come to you very, very quickly, very soon. I guess from my vantage point in the Arab world, for a very long time, we were told, and I'd say intellectuals, policymakers, and observers put up Turkey as a model for this region, a model for political transformation based on democratic governance, accountability, and a model for also economic vibrancy based on strong industry, openness to neighbors. We hear much of this now. We hear a lot less talk about Turkey being a model for the Arab world. I guess the question I have is why, and how does Turkey, should the yes vote prevail and a strong executive with power consolidation emerge, how does Turkey look to its neighbors? how does Turkey look to people in the region who thought, this is the path we want to go to. This is the path that will bring stability, prosperity, both domestically and abroad. So maybe,
Sure.
Ghalib, I'll come to you and then go to Ali for this question.
Well, I think one of the, in this regard, like, the idea of Turkish model was neither produced by Turks nor Arabs. Actually, it was the first produced by, in the US and later in Europe. And the major idea was that a Muslim country with a functioning democracy and with a growing economy and relatively good structure of governance. But at different stage, that means something else as well too. A Muslim country that could achieve the economic development and political modernization. So that means different things to different audience and in different contexts, because the Turkish model in 2000, during the AK Party, represented something different than when we refer to the Mustafa Kemal Atatürk as a Turkish model. But nevertheless, I think one of the points that is very much important is that, unfortunately, in the Arab world or in the Middle East, the idea of stability is very much emphasized. But the stability is not a very neutral word. It's not politically it's not very neutral. You have form of stability, democratic stability, authoritarian stability, etc., etc. One of the trouble that I find in recent arguments, that the people are very much inclined to have simplistic reading of what yes means, what no means. Yes means stability, no means instability, etc. I think it's not that easy and it's not that simple. First, the fragility of yes and no means very much, whether that means stability or instability. Secondly, the managing aftermath of the referendum is as much important as the referendum itself. Either it is yes or no. These two will define what kind of stability or instability we'll have. One of the period of instability that Turkey has experienced, unfortunately, came in the aftermath of an election win in which the government received its highest votes in 2011. You have with this 50% of the vote winning the election, and starting from 2013, there has been a period of instability in the country for 3-4 years. So winning yes will not automatically mean stability. No does not necessarily mean instability. It is very much important how you will manage the aftermath of it, and it is very much important what is the margin of it. 51% of the yes probably will create as much instability as, let's say, 51% of no. Because then the question of legitimacy will come, and then the question of the representation. One of the factors that people choose the street over the ballot box was the idea that the ballot box is not working. When the idea of the ballot box is not working, then the idea of street becomes much more important. So in this regard, I think this easy say of yes and yes means no, yes means this, no means this is very much that. When it comes to on the foreign policy front, I think the reason that I said there will not be much change on the foreign policy front is that because Turkey, as I said, Turkey has already downsized its foreign policy. Turkey's foreign policy is no longer in the region-wide. Right now, when you ask what is the Turkish-Syrian policy, I would say, well, Turkey doesn't have a Syrian policy. Turkey has a northern Syrian policy, and it is the three things that I said. And in this regard, there is much kind of consensus among the major political actors in Turkey, whether it's the government parties, whether it is the nationalist MHP. The CHP might have a different idea, but the CHP will not be in a position to wield any power, even if there is a no vote tomorrow. And the idea that a no vote means a weakened Erdogan, that will lead to a downsizing Turkish foreign policy in the region, or the less credibility, or Turkey being less ambitious, might not be true, because for a very simple reason, Turkey undertook the most daring action in Syria a month after the coup, when the Turkish military was in complete disarray, when everyone expected that Turkey will be out of the Syrian games, and then this action happened. So in this regard, this simplistic reading of yes, no, that. But when it comes to the issue of model, I think, unfortunately, I never believed in the idea of model, but nevertheless, the issue and the idea of experience was important. I don't expect with this referendum, irrespective of the result, I don't think that we will be sending a good signal. Either it's yes or no, because for a very simple reason, unless there is a very one side wins this with a very small margin, I expect a period of heated discussion and some level of instability following it. Because right now, if the referendum passes with the percentage that most poll firms are expecting, that means right after the election, the question of the legitimacy or the question of the other question will come to the fore. And this will not definitely send a good message to the Arab world. But if after the election, either it's yes or no, if the political leadership can manage it, if the yes votes prevails, if the government can show to the people yes will not mean the defeat for themselves, that will send a positive message. And if the no vote prevails, if the next stage for the political opposition will not be to seek for the overthrow of the government through some undemocratic means, that will send also another positive message. I think if the opposition has learned any lesson from the June 7th to November 1st, is to trying undemocratic means will only benefit the government.
Ali, I think when we talk about this topic, we should not mix up between what is objective and what is personal or subjective. And there are legitimate concerns that my two colleagues talked about, Ghalib and Özgür. And I think that these concerns are real concerns, and they are about the concentration of power in the hands of one person. And this concerns so many supporters of the Justice and Development Party. And if the no campaigners win in the referendum, this is going to be because of those who used to support traditionally the Justice and Development Party and did not either vote or voted against. There are 3 points that we have to understand. The first point, the AK party is still in power up to today since 2002 for 2 reasons. The first reason is the economic achievements that have been made by this political party that had led so many people to vote for this political party. The second point or reason is the inefficiency of the other parties, the opposing parties, and due to the fact that the opposition did not want to reach power. The best they want to achieve is to take part in the power, and the biggest party is the Republican People's Party, CHP, and this represents only a small group of Ataturk secular proponents, and these are not able to reach power. So if people vote no against the constitutional amendments, if they vote against, this is going to be a big blow against the PAC party. It is going to be the first defeat since 2002. And we talked about the economic achievements. We have so many pressures imposed on the economy due to the internal and external situations. The economic situation in Turkey is in a very critical situation. If the referendum ends with the winning of the no campaigners, this is going to have an impact on the economy in particular. And what is very problematic here is that the Justice and Development Party, it is going to lose its exclusive pioneering leadership, and there is no other party that can substitute the AK party. And this what had happened in June 2015. The political party won the parliamentary elections, but it was not able to form on its own a government. And we have seen the economic and security and social problems and political problems that had happened. So why are we going to have a lack of stability? And the second point that was commented on by my colleague Özgür, the political system in Turkey nowadays suffers from a problem. The political system in Turkey is not parliamentary. Yes, as per the constitution, it is parliamentary, but in actual fact, it is not a parliamentary system due to the referendums in 2007 and 2010, which has led to the election of the president directly by the people, and the powers of the president are very large compared to the powers that are in the hands of a president in a parliamentary system. And this was made by the head of the coup at the end of the 80s of the 20th century. And this is not, of course, a presidential system. It is neither parliamentary nor presidential. If we solve this problem by either making it a parliamentary system or making it advance into a presidential system, so a no vote will only take it in a middle position, and this is not going to lead to a solution of the problem. The problem will remain, and if we have a head of a government that is strong, or if the AK party forms a government with another kind of party, this is going to have repercussions on the economy and the security. All these points should be taken into account. With regard to the model and how Turkey was a model and how we were speaking in 2009 and 2010 about this model, this is related to the Turkish project, which is an economic project. It is not an ideological or a nationalistic or a secular kind of project. And this economic project that the government was aiming to become a great power in the centennial anniversary of the establishment of the state, this was achieving great results prior to the Arab revolutions. The Islamists were talking about democracy. They were talking about the industries, the development of technologies, and also pragmatically they were talking about how Islamists can benefit from the pragmatism of the AK party. So how was this kind of project able to make strides prior to the Arab revolutions? This was due to the stability. There was kind of a unreal, fake kind of stability, a kind of stability as a result of dictatorship. Yes, we had such kind of stability, and we have achieved development in that project. And this stability was internal and external. And after the Arab revolutions, the situation was no longer the same. So the opportunities that were available to be able to export these models to Arab countries, this kind of situation was no longer available in Turkey. So this project started suffering as a result of that. In the first 2 years, the influence, the impact was not huge, was not big enough, because the Arab countries that had revolutions were geographically far from Turkey: Tunisia, Libya, and Egypt. Yes, there was change, but they were a little bit far from Turkey. In the aftermath, we have seen revolutions starting in Syria and other countries. And instead of exporting this kind of model concept, Turkey started becoming in a different situation, which is a defensive position. And we have seen a regression of this Turkish project. And now we no longer talk about a model and the exportation of a model. We've started talking about a destiny. We have seen the dismantlement of countries, and we have seen the rise of non-state actors. And we know that there is no economy in Syria nor in Iraq, and there is a lack of security. All these things had an impact on the Turkish situation. The lack of security and also the impact on the economy, all of them had an impact on that. So here, thank you so much.
We will start the questions in just a minute, but I need to give Özgür a chance.
Two really short points. First of all, I could not speak about this model issue because it's something that I'm really very much concerned about. Being a model for the Islamic world was never a Turkish aspiration, and it is not a Turkish aspiration. It's not a Turkish invention. Turks have never said that we will be a model to the Islamic world. No Turkish government has ever said it. And from my perspective, it would be a reflection of hubris to say that it would be disrespect to say that we will be a model for you. And Turks have not done that disrespect to fellow Muslim countries. Turkey being a model was part of actually the broader Middle East project. And because Turks protested the word model, actually, later on, the word model was replaced by source of inspiration, which was a little bit more acceptable to Turks and possibly a little bit more acceptable to fellow Muslim countries as well. Why do we speak less about Turkey being a model these days? Yes, I mean, first of all, because Turkey is less successful than it used to be, because Turkey doesn't shine anymore. But the second reason is Turkey being a model was actually an instrument for democracy promotion to the Islamic world, democracy exportation. And because now there is no policy of exporting democracy to the Islamic world, there is no need to identify Turkey either as a model or as a source of inspiration. That's why we don't speak. But the main point is Turks did not invent Turkey being a model for the Middle East. Second point about stability. I think, we could speak for days about stability, but in very short terms, if this referendum succeeds and the proposed system is set in Turkey, it will produce stability of government at the expense of political stability, at the expense of societal peace, because it will create polarization. Why? Because the proposed system is a winner-take-all system. Again, in the United States, as the new president is learning, the winner doesn't take all. And he's learning fast, okay? The United States is a presidential system, and the winner doesn't take it all. But in the proposed system, the winner takes it all. And the loser is really in a very bad situation. So the losers will do anything that it takes not to lose, which will create a great deal of political tension, which will create societal instability. And I believe this is one of the most important points of this proposal.
Thank you. We will come to you now for questions, comments. We will do one round, come to the authors, and then we'll do a second round, inshallah. We don't have a lot of time, but we want to accommodate as many people as possible. We will start with the gentleman in the second row. Try to be brief. Identify yourself, Lo Samaht.
Thank you for this invitation. I am from a European community, and since many years, one of the major news on all of our media was the joining, the wish, the desire, the intention of Turkey to be part of our community, let's say. Since few months, we don't understand anything anymore. Some of you can understand, can explain. Is still in the agenda the wish to be part of Europe? Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a great question. The question was, what happened to the agenda of joining Europe? We'll take one more question from this side. Gentleman on the right.
Thank you. I'm Ashraf Siddiqui. My point is only one. What will be the influence of the referendum? I mean, how, especially on the next elections? I mean, will it be giving any free hand in the elections, and the opposition will be happy, or will have another challenge? The present government will be having another challenge in the new elections.
Okay, thank you. Take one question from the back.
Thank you. Ron Jalaldin, I'm a visiting fellow here at the Brookings Doha Center. Two very quick questions. The indications from Washington is that the new administration will turn up the heat on Iran, potentially by, for example, engaging Iranian proxies in Syria, maybe putting the IRGC or listing the IRGC as a terrorist group. How does Turkey feature in this looming battle between the Americans and the Iranians? And secondly, what kind of concessions or guarantees does the US have to give Turkey in order for Turkey to be content with, or in order for Turkey to reluctantly accept a Syrian Kurdish region in the same way that it accepted the Iraqi Kurdish region in the 1990s? Thank you.
Gentlemen, you heard the questions. Feel free to take up whichever question you want. But I'm going to stop you at 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, joining Europe, the last 3-4 years has been quite turbulent, and there is an appetite on both sides for the joining of the EU. But the EU project was not killed in the last 2 or 3 years. The EU project was killed in 2006 and 2007 when the Turkey was supposed to have its shining years. And the fact that the reason for this process to die was not because for what Turkey was doing, it was because for what Turkey was. I mean, the President Sarkozy, when frozen so many chapters and simply said, even if Turkey opens all the chapters, the Turkish membership will be up for the referendum. When the Chancellor Angela Merkel said in 2007, the 1963, when we opened the gate of the Euro for Turkey, the Europe of then and the Europe of now is two completely different things. She simply meant the Europe of then was an economic structure. The Europe of today is not just economic, but is a political and cultural structure, and in which a Muslim nation could not fit in. And there you have all this blocking of the chapter. So if today you have the most reformist government on earth in Turkey, and if he wants to revitalize this European process, how many chapters does Turkey has to revitalize? Only 2 or 3. There is simply, out of the 35 chapters, only 1 chapter has been closed, and 14 or 15 chapter has been opened but not closed. So we started this project in 2005, and we are in 2017. 12th year, we achieved to close 1 chapter, and we have 34 to go. So it's a quite promising future. So simply, it's not a working formula. Neither Turkey nor Europe should continue with this dishonesty, and that's why I think they should work on a new framework. Because neither Europe is in the business of accepting Turkey, nor Turkey has appetite to go down this road, and that was killed years ago.
On Iran.
Iran.
Very briefly.
Very briefly. Well, right now we receive mixed messages from Washington. If the U.S. decide to confront Iran, the region-wide, then Turkey will feature significantly, and then there will be the areas of cooperation between Turkey and U.S. But the messages that sometimes we get is that the U.S. is interested in confronting Iran, not first as a region-wide, but first on certain location, starting with the Yemen. If this is the case, Turkey featuring in will be less than what it should have been expected. But if U.S. decide to do this in Syria, yes, then you will see Turkey featuring it significantly. On the Kurdish one, I think there is qualitative difference between the Iraqi Kurdistan and the Turkey Kurdistan than the Syrian one, because a simple factor, neither Barzani nor Talabani had extension in Turkey. So relatively, it was a foreign policy issue with domestic implication. But here, the major difference is that the major party that is dominant in the Syrian Kurdistan is also, the major party that Turkey is fighting with. And unless and until there is a change on the Turkey's political on the Turkey side between the PKK and government, there will not be any major breakthrough. But the U.S. could help with 2 things, I think, which U.S. have not done it. One of the things, to make sure that the Syrian Kurdistan is not a Payadistan, PKKistan, rather it become a Kurdistan. And one of the factors that it is a Kurdistan, to let other Kurdish groups to freely operate and be present there. The fact that most of the other Kurdish opposition group cannot have presence in Syria, starting with the Rosh Peshmerga in Iraqi Kurdistan, means it's not, from the Turkish perspective, it is a PKKistan, PYDistan. And secondly, U.S. could have made its support for the PYD and PKK conditional, both its military aid and down the road its reconstruction aid. Okay. If it could do it, I think that would have created a process between the 3 parties.
Uzgur, is the European integration dead?
Yes, I will take only that question. My response is very similar to Ghalib's. First point, the European Union mismanaged the Turkish project. It's mismanagement. Second, I will not say dishonesty, but both sides agreed on constructive ambiguity. Why did they decide on both Turkey and the European Union? Because neither Turkey was ready to become a member to the EU, nor the European Union was ready to digest a country the size of Turkey. And by the way, the population, the European populations, the European societies were not ready to accept such an idea. So both sides agreed that it will take time to prepare Turkey, and in the process, it's good for Turkey to be in such a process, even if it doesn't end up with membership, because it helps Turkey modernize. So that was what constructive ambiguity was about. But recently, both sides are agreeing that this constructive ambiguity is not actually constructive. On the European side, the European populist parties are campaigning on Turkey. The European populist parties are campaigning on Turkey. One of the Brexiteer positions was, do we want to remain in a union to which Turkey will become a member? That was one of their main arguments. And again, in the Netherlands, we saw the same thing. And European liberals now want to actually deny the European populist parties this argument by cutting off Turkey's membership processes. From the Turkish perspective, actually this constructive ambiguity is a burden on Turkey, because the EU makes demands unrelated to the accession process on Turkey in return of this constructive ambiguity. And Turkey is tired of this game, and Turkey actually wants a relationship in which the EU needs to give something in return for what it demands. The refugee agreement was one of the first examples of this. Now, why would I say it's dying if it's not dead? Why am I saying it's dying? Because the relationship has been poisoned. You know, recently the exchange of insults between Turks and Europeans have exceeded acceptable levels. And I must say, as a Turkish citizen, I must say it's coming more from my government, but it's also coming from Europe as well. And it's actually creating an anti-European public opinion in Turkey and an anti-Turkish public opinion in Europe, which is constraining the choices of the governments. Now, there will be a window of opportunity if the referendum succeeds. In case the referendum succeeds, the first thing the president of Turkey will try will be reach out to Western allies for recognition, for acceptance of the new regime in Turkey. And if they do so, if they indicate that they could actually accept the new regime in Turkey as a democratic regime, he could actually undo some of the recent anti-democratic moves in Turkey. He could, for example, release some of the journalists in prison, or he could release the Kurdish politicians who are in prison in exchange for recognition by the European Union and by the United States of the new regime in Turkey. If it doesn't come, if this recognition doesn't come, as I suspect it won't, in this case, as he is saying today, he will, for example, attempt to and succeed in reinstating death penalty in Turkey, which would be the total, absolute end of Turkey-EU relations.
Thank you, Özgür. Ali, you want to take up any of these questions?
Yes. أعتقد أن العلاقة
the relations between Turkey and the European Union is a very important one for both parties. Neither party can give up on the other party completely, and any other grouping is not an alternative for Turkey. I think both parties have confused issues a lot in the past, but there still remains an opportunity, and it's a big if the referendum succeeds, to restore things to some sort of normality, because the Turkish side will feel uncomfortable if the EU looks down at Turkey, and also the European Union will be making a mistake if they try to exert pressure on Turkey through media campaigns, because that will reflect badly on the people. This kind of discourse will lead to some negative consequences. If the European Union wants to revive this issue really and honestly, there should be clear, constructive issues behind discussions and negotiations behind closed doors. The Turkish side will be able to absorb more if it's done behind closed doors than it's done in public through the media. The other thing is For example, when can Turkey accept an autonomous Kurdish region in Syria? I think the comparison with the Iraqi situation is not on, because Turkey did not have a say in the Kurdish situation in northern Iraq, but it benefited from it later on. The Syrian situation is different. The Turkish side interfered very late in the game, very late in the day, militarily. Now Turkey is there, it has a presence. So if it's up to Turkey to say anything, Turkey will never accept, and it should never accept, because this is something that the Syrian people should decide through a freely elected Syrian parliament to determine the Kurdish question, and not to be imposed from the outside by force. Also, the situation, if compared with Iraq, is different. In Syria, it's a project, an armed project led by PYD exclusively. It committed massacres. They also oppressed other Kurds who have different political affiliations. So there is fundamental difference and contradiction between the Syrian Kurdish model, presided over by PYD exclusively, is a major concern and threat to Turkey's national security and integrity of the country. And this is a huge difference between the Kurdish Syrian project and the Kurdish Iraqi project. The other point I would like to make, if the referendum is passed, most amendments will not implemented immediately. They will not come into effect immediately. There will be something important like the abolishment of military courts, the relationship of the president's political parties. I agree with my colleague Osgur on this point only. This will be activated immediately. And of course, do we have time? The question of Iran and Turkey, I think the American side, or this is what the Americans are suggesting in their contacts with Turkey. They are serious in standing up to the Iranian influence, but I think there is absolute chaos within the administration. There are still vacancies in the State Department, in the Pentagon, and the coordination of a coordinated policy with a united vision is not there. So just relying on statements which are sometimes conflicting is very dangerous. We have to wait and see what the Americans will do, and whatever they want to do, they will need strong regional partners, whether in Turkey or Qatar or wherever. The Americans cannot do everything on their own. So therefore, relying on the Americans is wrong, and it has been proven in the past when the Obama withdrew from the area. We saw America's allies in a very difficult situation. Now they're trying to come back, but this will take time. We have time for one question. Please go ahead. You've been raising your hand all evening. Please, very briefly. Why briefly? I'll be speaking in Arabic. Ali, why this antagonistic relationship and animosity from the Western world towards Erdogan? Is it because he is a Muslim, or is it because he is a dictator? And how can we explain in return this love of Europe towards Abdel Fattah al-Sisi? We know he is a dictator, and we know he is a Muslim. So why does Europe reject a country where the government elected by its own people and supports a country like Israel, which is solely... سؤال جيد. Please, Mr. Excuse me. أنا رئيس الجلسة. لدينا نقاش مفتوح في جو مفتوح. علينا أن نستمع إلى بعضنا البعض ونتسامح ونقبل بعضنا البعض. شكرا. اللي كان اسمي بطول عكاش من جامعة قطر. أنا هنا كمواطنة تركية.
Actually, it's a comment for Mr. Ali's speech. And you were mentioning, we are all talking about foreign policy and Middle Eastern policy of Turkey and Western policy of Turkey when it comes to election. But I want to correct, if it's not so much for you, what you said about powers of political party in Turkey. You were commenting more than one time on political parties in Turkey that they are not capable of governance if we don't have like AK Party governance. Turkish politics, it's much more than AK Party. There are more than one actors. Let's say we have nationalists, we have Republican parties, and you said you met one of their leaders in Turkey. My comment here, yes, the AK Party is the most powerful actor right now, but it doesn't mean that we have other actors who will influence the outcomes of the election. Let's say it's not only black and white when it comes to results. As Mr. Galip said, it is all about the governance of result. If we have yes, it will be again about governance. The problem here, there is this societal insecurity, as Mr. Özgür said, but the problem, even if we have yes vote here, you were talking about economic problems of Turkey. They will not gone because the problems are not internal, they are regional. We have this global economic crisis and we have this regional wars. We can't have an excellent economy while we have war next to our borders. So problem as a Turkish national, I believe. And it's not about we will not have AKP anymore, then we will have chaos, or we will have AKP and we will have stability. It's all about the combination of regional and local politics under a stable idea of governance. If there will be yes vote and if there will be tension outside, there will be no stability. So the problem, the convenience of all actors in Turkey, Kurds, Republicans, nationalists, which are more than AK Party if they are together, right? So it's more about the combination of powers than conflicts of powers right now. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take one final question from a very patient gentleman who's been sitting up front.
Merhaba, hoş geldiniz. My name is John Ronnie from the Embassy of Canada. There is a school of thought that would say that the coup that occurred in July was the greatest beneficiary of that coup was Mr. Erdogan. Which permitted him to effectively gut the academics, intellectuals, crush the press, and continue to neuter the military. Given his reaction since that time, how do you think he would accept the results of a no vote?
Thank you. We have 5 minutes left, okay, and we want to use them very efficiently. So 2 minutes each. Feel free to respond to the question that you think.
I'll use one.
You'll take one. Ghalib, I hope you take one also.
Ghalib can use my 1 minute.
Okay.
but I will start if he's taking one.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
علي تفضل.
أبدأ من الأخير من هنا.
I start with the last question. I was very trying to be very precise in my comment. I've said if a yes vote will not be like Moses' shaft, which will cure everything, and like will not be a magic wand. In politics, any politics which goes into any party which goes into politics as a political party should have its aim as gaining power. I did not say the political activity in Turkey only means AK Party. I said I gave two examples. The CHP, which is the biggest party after the AK Party, is unable to gain power because of the very way it conducts politics. And for the last 15 years, gets almost a constant percentage of the vote. At best, does not go beyond 30% or thereabouts. Of course, these parties like the DHP, the CHP, and the others, if they unite and in a one front, they will win power. So the question is to them, why don't they get together? It's not up to me to decide that. I think because the maximum ambitions they have is to participate in government and not rule the country. Of course, I encourage them to come to power and behave like political parties who want to come to power. As for the European Union, this is not solely to do with Turkey. There is a misunderstanding between East and West for the social dynamics, for history, for geography, for culture, etc. Mainly they deal with superficial issues. The Turkish side is very sensitive about the way the discourse is used. In Turkey, if you incite against someone, by the way, I'm not an Erdogan supporter personally. I'm a supporter of Abdullah Gül more. If you do something, there will be a popular percentage of popular vote who will respond to you because they don't like this agitation against him, and the political person, the leader, will have to respond, otherwise he'll appear weak and ineffective. So if you want to address any issue, you should do it properly. And for this reason, I said any dialogue with Turkey should not be conducted in public or through the media, but behind closed doors. The Europeans, for example, have double standards. When the Europeans talk about a military coup and they criticize it if it's in another country, when it comes to Turkey, they do not do that. So people want to know why this double standards. And also, if Iran has probably, apart from China, as the country with the most death sentences passed every year. But they deal with Iran. You remember how they dealt with Iran respectfully in the nuclear issue, and they're always willing to do business with Iran. But when it comes to Turkey, there's always another standard. So this is important to say. Özgür, في الحقيقة
question of the gentleman over here, I don't believe, and there's no way I would believe that that was a stage coup. If you lived through it, you would know that it was a real coup. However, President Erdogan took very good advantage of it, and in the case of a no vote, he will continue taking advantage of it, which will mean that most probably the rule of emergency in Turkey will continue, giving the president de facto presidential system powers. To the question of the gentleman over here, why the European Union and the United States are more critical of Turkey while they are not critical of Egypt? The answer is very simple. Sorry? And Israel. Okay. It's because Turkey is a NATO member while neither Egypt nor Israel are NATO members and they have no aspirations of. It's because Turkey is a member of the Council of Europe while neither Egypt nor Israel are members of the Council of Europe and they have no aspirations to. While Turkey is a customs union with the European Union, neither Egypt nor Israel have a customs union agreement with the European Union and they have no aspirations to. While Turkey is still a candidate country to the European Union, neither Israel nor Egypt have such aspirations. And even if they had such aspirations, those aspirations would not be acceptable. For this reason, it should be only normal that Turkey is accepted to have different standards as opposed to countries which don't have similar relationships with the United States and the European Union.
Thank you, Özgür.
Thanks.
Ghalib,
Well,
this time I'm going to hold you to 1 minute.
Oh, okay. I think there's one major misunderstanding. Neither parliamentarism nor presidentialism is sacred. So any system can be good and can be bad at the same time. It depends how you construct it. The major criticism of this package is not because it brings the parliamentarism system. It's the content of it. And actually, the story of the two packages that AK Party has introduced through referendum, one in 2010 and one is today, shows why there is criticism of it. In 2009, Akbar received a major blow in the election by getting only 38% of the votes, whereas only 2 years ago it received 47%. But in 2010, Akbar brought a package to referendum, and all major parties was against it. Back then, AK Party was not that strong in the system. The media was not that much in favor of the AK Party, but the package that it championed received 58% of the vote. Because it was in reformist, and because, despite the rejection of the other parties' political leadership, people could associate themselves with the package, and it's what went up in the referendum. And a year later, there was general election. It went to 50%. And today, the AK Party starts this referendum package with around 64% of the vote, because it is in alliance with the nationalists. Like almost all the small parties of conservative circle also publicly supported it, apart from the Saadet Party. And we are talking about a coalition around 64-65%. Normally, we should not have a debate here whether it can pass or not, because you have 65% of the vote supporting it. The fact that right now we are talking about 51%, 50%, maybe it passed, maybe it's not, that means the one that forms the social base of the AK Party, still a significant chunk of it, and the MHP is not convinced of this package. And this in itself, even if it passes, yes, it is a victory, but at the same time, the fact that you are starting from 65% and will be satisfied with 52% means that it's a win and a loss at the same time, depending how you look at it, and that's the major criticism of it.
Thank you, Ghalib.
And I will stop it here.
Thank you. 3 days from now, a few days from now, on the 16th, on Sunday, Turks will be casting their votes. On Monday morning, we'll find out the outcome. This has been a very fruitful, constructive, and very helpful debate for me. And I'm sure for many of you here, it will not be the last debate we will have on Turkey. We obviously wish the country well. We wish it stability. We wish it prosperity. We wish it friendly relations with its neighbors, with Europe, and with the rest of the world. We will have another event, inshallah. What made this event possible and this discussion very fruitful, obviously, is having three very, very smart, very articulate, and individuals who brought multiple views, really, to shed light on the complexity of what's happening in Turkey. I think we owe them a very warm round of applause from all of you. One small announcement, and I do appreciate that many of you get bombarded by emails from the Brookings Doha Center. Forgive us for the announcements, the second reminders, and the last reminders. We have another event coming up at the end of the month at Qatar University. It will be on Trump 100 years into the new administration. We will be circulating it tomorrow. 100 days, God forbid. La samah Allah. 100 days. We will circulate it tomorrow, inshallah. Please join us for the hors d'oeuvres and the drinks outside. And again, thank you very much for coming and being with us, and have a very good evening. Shukran.